What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with the box office breakdown for Sunday, April 12th, where, as I predicted last week, the exact same movies are back in the top three: the Super Mario Galaxy movie, Project Hail Mary, and the drama. And there were a few new releases in the wonderful world of horror, like the reboot of Faces of Death and Exit 8. But the big news is that the latest Mario movie has now reached $629 million worldwide, and while the sequel might be lagging about 13% behind its predecessor on the domestic front, the movie remains a box office smash. And keep in mind that Universal didn't go insane and overspend on the sequel. The cost of the sequel was only $110 million. So even if they went completely berserk on the marketing campaign, the movie will still be insanely profitable. But the question is whether or not it can sustain its momentum and cross the billion mark. I suspect that it will, because upcoming movies like The Mummy or Michael or Hokum appeal to very different audiences. And if people want to take their kids to see Hokum or The Mummy, by all means do so. They're probably going to get totally freaked out. But for people looking for family-friendly entertainment, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is going to remain the obvious option for the next couple weeks. So my prediction is that it's going to definitely cross the billion mark, but it won't quite reach the heights of the original movie. But the other good news is that box office is up 23% compared to 2025, and there's some movies coming our way that might completely, totally explode. Like Michael, I feel like if the movie delivers at all, it'll probably be a success on the level of Bohemian Rhapsody. And of course, we've got Spider-Man: Brand New Day and The Odyssey. And what's crazy is how it feels like Zendaya is in like all the movies coming our way. Right now she's in the drama, which is continuing to do pretty well. It's performing a little bit better than Challengers. So as far as like kind of art house credibility or adult-oriented movies are concerned, she's doing very well. But she's got Euphoria Season 3 coming out tonight. And then she's got both The Odyssey and Spider-Man: Brand New Day coming in July. And then she has Dune Part 3 coming in December. It's like all she needed to do was find a way to like insert herself into Avengers Doomsday, and she basically would have been in like all the blockbusters. And I think she's doing some voice work for another big animated movie. Hang on one sec. I was just looking her up earlier. She's got voice work in Shrek 5, but that's not coming until next year. In any case, when we close the books on Zendaya's career, whenever it ends, whether it's 5 years from now or 50 years from now, she very well might look back on 2026 and be like, wow, I had a really big year in 2026, because she is just in everything. But for anybody curious about some of the smaller new releases this past weekend, Faces of Death opened in 1,600 theaters with 1.7 million, and Exit 8 from Neon opened in 495 theaters to 1.4 million. And I intended to review Exit 8. I went to see it. I hadn't ever played the video game that it was based on, but I love Neon. I love Japanese horror. I was like, bring it on. I fell asleep in Exit 8, and I don't know if I fell asleep because I just recorded a podcast right beforehand, so I was kind of drained. But I never fall asleep in movies. Usually if I'm bored by a movie, I kind of get like angry and energized, and I look forward to like sharpening my knives and like ripping it to pieces. But in that I slept through a big chunk of it, I didn't feel like I had a right to review it because I just missed a big chunk of it. So you tell me, did I overlook Exit 8? But I always remain open to discovering really cool horror movies made in Japan, but Exit 8 just didn't quite do it for me. And I considered going to see Faces of Death, but I heard from a couple of people whose taste that I trusted. It was basically a shameless cash grab, cashing in on the nostalgia for the Faces of Death movies from the 1980s. When I was a little kid, I did watch the original Face. I think I saw the first one a couple times and the sequels maybe once. But if you were a horror fan in the 1980s, if you walked down the horror section at your local video store, you would eventually come upon Faces of Death in banned in 47 countries, and basically the premise was this was all like real death, like executions and all these horrible things. And when I was 9 or 10 years old, I was inclined to believe that it was all real. I haven't watched the movie in decades because I'm going to assume, or I think I can safely assume, that if I were to watch it now, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so fake and so stupid. But I remember there was one scene where like somebody's being eaten by an alligator and his friends are just filming it. There was another person being executed in an electric chair. There was one scene where people are eating monkey brains. I mean, it was rough, nasty stuff. And
I'm Dr. Francis Gross, and over the past 20 years, I've compiled a library of the many faces of death.
But I have a quick funny anecdote related to Faces of Death, because when I was in high school, the entire high school had to participate in these speech competitions. And initially you would just do it for your English class. And if it did well there, then you'd compete against your entire grade. And if you competed well against your entire grade, then you would compete against the entire high school. And I did a speech about the Faces of Death franchise because a bunch of kids got together and watched them one time when I was in high school. So I was just basically talking about like how come people are so enamored with these really grisly, gruesome movies and that sort of thing. But I ended ended up coming in fourth place in my high school, which meant I didn't get to compete in front of the entire high school, but it meant I was going to be the moderator for places 1, 2, and 3, and then finally people could kind of judge what was the best speech of all. But this is all just a very long-winded way of saying that I've got very fond memories about the Faces of Death franchise from decades ago, but I couldn't bring myself to see the new one. But maybe I'll see it when it's available on digital or streaming. But as always with my box office reactions, I like to get the opinions of the experts. So let's head over to Variety, where Rebecca Rubin has an article titled Box Office, Super Mario Galaxy Movie scores $69 million in second weekend. You, Me, and Tuscany opens to $8 million. Universal's animated sequel, the Super Mario Galaxy Movie, remained number one at the domestic box office, collecting $69 million from 4,284 North American theaters in its second weekend of release. Those ticket sales mark a 48% decline from its debut, a stronghold for a blockbuster of this scale. So far, the video game adaptation has grossed $308 million domestically and $629 million globally. After just 12 days in theaters, the Super Mario Galaxy Movie has overtaken Project Hail Mary as the highest grossing movie of the year. Mario didn't have much competition over the weekend in terms of family audiences. This weekend's major new release, the Universal romantic comedy You, Me, and Tuscany, appealed to young women, while holdovers Project Hail Mary and the drama catered to older adults. Given the range of offerings, it was another promising weekend at the domestic box office. After a streak of hits in early spring, including Scream 7 and Pixar's Hoopers, overall ticket sales are 23% ahead of the same point in 2025, according to ComScore. This momentum comes as theater owners are heading to Las Vegas on Monday for CinemaCon, the industry's annual trade show where studios pitch their upcoming slates. Hollywood and exhibitors are arriving in good spirits because people are actually going to theaters. It's a change of pace from post-pandemic years where cinemas were barren for much of the first quarter and business didn't pick up until closer to May. Attendance in April should remain strong with director Lee Cronin's The Mummy reboot April 17th and Lionsgate's Michael biopic April 24th on schedule. Yeah, I'm excited about The Mummy, but whenever I see the trailer, I'm thinking, God, this trailer is so good and so effective and so unnerving, right up until the point where the little girl starts to talk. And I'm like, oh, this movie's going to be total dog shit and totally ridiculous.
Don't worry, Grandma. It's fun to be dead.
Like, it's amazing how just one simple creative choice can utterly undermine and erode whatever credibility you might have as a horror movie. But I would love to be wrong. I keep hearing that the movie's really gross, really disturbing, but I imagine it's also going to be really stupid. But I'm seeing it later this week, so I'm hoping for the best. We want to see box office back at pre-pandemic levels, and April should come close. As David A. Gross, who publishes the box office newsletter Franchise Re, he noted the month is just 6% below the pre-pandemic average. Overall, the current trend of the box office is positive. You, Me, and Tuscany opened in fourth place with $8 million from 3,151 theaters. The movie also earned $1.1 million at the international box office for a global start of $9.1 million. It cost just $18 million to produce. Audiences embraced the film, which earned an A- grade on CinemaScore exit polls. Opening weekend crowds were 80% female, while 53% were between 18 and 34 years old. Directed by Kat Coiro, their love story stars Halle Bailey and Regé-Jean Page as strangers who experience a meet-cute at an abandoned Tuscan villa. Now, I've said it before on this channel, and I'll say it again, the movie business needs to rediscover their love of cheesy, sentimental rom-coms and chick flicks. And this is a great example. While I would rather be like dragged into an alley and have like my teeth kicked in than go see a movie like this, there's clearly an audience that just loves and adores sugary, sweet, saccharine, sentimental love stories. It's a big part of what gets people to the theater. And while, make your Jason Statham action movies for the dudes and so on and so forth, but girls love this stuff. Even if they don't want to admit it, they absolutely eat it up. As we're seeing here, 80% of the audience was women, but also more importantly, 53% were between ages 18 and 34. So this is a great way of kind of baiting young women to go back to the theater. And not everybody needs to go see Star Wars and Marvel and all these big franchises. Sometimes you can just have a little market segmentation. Like, let's make these movies for these people and these movies for these people, and everybody can go home happy. But back to the article. Project Hail Mary remained a box office force in second place with $24.5 million in its fourth outing, a mere 21% decline from the prior weekend. So far, the space epic starring Ryan Gosling has generated a mighty $256.6 million in North America and $510 million worldwide. The $200 million budgeted tentpole has become a major hit for Amazon MGM at a pivotal time for the studio. For the first time since Amazon acquired MGM in 2022, the company is unveiling a full theatrical slate in 2026. Now that's excellent news for Amazon MGM, and I'm sure this movie is going to do extremely well once it's available in digital formats. But if we just want to judge the theatrical campaign, I suspect the break-even point for this movie is probably somewhere around like $600 million, so it's still got a little ways to go. Because in general, when it comes to movie math, if you want to take in the box office split between theaters and the studio, as well as accounting for all the marketing costs, in general, for a big budget movie, you basically need to multiply the budget by either 2.5 or 3, and in this case, that would be 600 million. So Amazon's got a little ways to go, but this is an obvious win for Amazon, where their prime goal, no pun intended, is to get people to sign up for Amazon Prime, and this will be a huge draw. And also for Andy Weir, he's going to sell a hell of a lot of books as a result, and whenever his next movie adaptation of one of his books might be, it'll definitely be on everybody's radar, because I suspect the final box office total for Project Hail Mary is going to surpass The Martian, the previous movie adaptation of one of his books. But getting back to the article, third place went to A24's dark comedy The Drama, which earned $8.7 million from 3,817 screens in its second weekend of release, dropping only 38% from its debut. The R-rated film starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson has grossed $30 million domestically and $65 million worldwide. It cost less than $28 million to produce. The Drama is turning into a word-of-mouth hit by inspiring plenty of conversation over the film's central premise. The movie revolves around a couple whose relationship is tested after they reveal the worst thing they've ever done. So that's obviously very good news for A24, where they continue to try to prove there is a market and an audience for adult skewing material. And they did this last year with the movie The Materialist. I didn't care for The Materialist, but it made more than $100 million. And if The Drama can perform in a similar way, well then A24 can continue to crank out these mid-range movies that the big studios seem so terrified to make. But it's also excellent news for writer-director Christopher Borgli, who comes from Norway, because I heard some people saying last week that the subject matter of the movie was so controversial that Christopher Borgli would never work in Hollywood again. I feel like when you set aside all the social crusading and the back-patting and all the grandstanding and whatnot, in the end, the entertainment business loves money, and if a director can generate money in box office with adult skewing material, Neon, A24, Focus Features, there are plenty of companies that will cut them checks all day to keep making movies. So yeah, I look forward to whatever the future might hold for director Christopher Borgli. And just to wrap up the article, Pixar's Hoppers rounded up the top 5 with $4.1 million in its sixth frame. The kid-friendly film is winding down with $157.1 million domestically and $354.4 million globally to date. Although Hoppers was hailed as a return to form for Pixar, the animation empire has struggled to launch an original hit. The movie ran out of steam faster than expected. Hoppers might only break even in its theatrical run against its $150 million budget. However, Disney expects the creature feature to draw audiences on Disney Plus and sell plenty of toys inspired by cute animals in the movie. So coming up this week, we've got the season 3 premiere of Euphoria this evening, and for everybody out there who likes watching Sydney Sweeney and Jacob Elordi get it on, well, that's going to be an obvious draw. We got The Dark Wizard on HBO, which is a documentary about a famous climber who lost his life. I'll definitely be checking that out. I don't know if I'll review it or not. Lee Cronen's The Mummy I'm seeing Thursday afternoon. I hope it'll be good, or at a minimum, fun to discuss. What else? Oh, and I've got, for all the people out there who are Orson Welles enthusiasts, and I know that some people intensely dislike him, but there are people like myself who are just kind of foam at the mouth in their enthusiasm. I've got a 2-hour video about Orson coming out tomorrow, where a friend of mine and I did a recording. In honor of Shakespeare's birthday, we did a 2-hour podcast about Chimes at Midnight. So I know that the appeal for a video like that is niche, but for the people that it appeals to, it'll appeal to them to a considerable degree. So if you're a fan of either Shakespeare or Wells, consider checking out that video that I'll drop sometime tomorrow.
That's sweet Jack Falstaff, kind Jack Falstaff, true Jack Falstaff, valiant Jack Falstaff, and therefore more valiant, being as he is old Jack Falstaff. Banish not him, thy hair is company, banish not him, thy hair is company, banish plump Jack and banish all the world.
That's all I've got for this week when it comes to box office. Usually there's more to discuss, but with no big major new releases, I was kind of grasping at straws trying to figure out what the hell is even going to talk about. But I'll probably review the season 3 premiere of Euphoria later tonight. And like I said, I'll be dropping a big video tomorrow and reviewing The Mummy later this week. So plenty more coming your way in the not so distant future. But I hope everybody has an amazing week. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.